if you continue drinking with shaky hands, if Mark stays in that kitchen looking at you like you're something fragile he wants to protect, then things are going to change in ways you still can't see. Yet hey, he said again, softer this time. I looked up at him over the rim of the glass. What? He leaned one shoulder lightly against the doorway. Not too close, not pushing into my space, but present enough that I could feel him there without looking. You don't have to act okay right now. Something about the way he said it almost broke me more than the bar had. Because everyone always says the wrong thing in moments like this. They say you're strong. They say everything happens for a reason. They say, maybe there's more to the story. But Mark didn't say any of that. He just gave me permission to stop pretending. And suddenly I was exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that sinks into your bones after your entire reality gets ripped open in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. I laughed quietly under my breath and shook my head. That's the problem, I said. I don't even know what okay is supposed to look like anymore. Mark didn't answer right away. The silence between us stretched, but it wasn't awkward. It was heavy in a different way now, more honest. I took another sip from the glass, smaller this time. My hands had finally stopped shaking, at least on the outside. You know what the worst part is? I asked quietly. His eyes lifted to mine. I keep replaying stupid things. I let out another hollow laugh. Not even the big moments. Just dumb little stuff. Like what? I stared past him toward the living room. Like last Tuesday he brought home takeout from that Italian place I like, because he said he knew I had a stressful week. I swallowed hard. And now I'm sitting here wondering if he picked it up on the way back from seeing her. The words tasted bitter coming out. Because that's what cheating does. It contaminates everything. Not just the relationship. The memories too. Every good moment suddenly feels suspicious. Every kind gesture feels staged. Every late night, every distracted glance, every, sorry, work's been crazy lately, starts rearranging itself into evidence. And the scary part? Your brain won't stop searching for more. Mark looked down briefly before speaking. That part messes people up the most. I frowned slightly. What? The rewriting, he said quietly. When your whole relationship suddenly starts looking different overnight. I stared at him for a second. You sound like you know a lot about this. Something flickered across his face. Not guilt exactly. More like recognition. My dad cheated on my mom, he admitted after a moment. The confession caught me off guard. I hadn't expected him to suddenly offer something personal. When I was younger, he continued, she used to sit at the kitchen table at night going through old pictures like she was trying to find the exact moment everything changed. I looked down at the glass in my hand. Did she? No, he said. Because there usually isn't one moment. It's 100 small ones you only understand after it's already over. That hit harder than I expected. I leaned back against the counter again, staring at the floor. 100 small moments. Maybe that's why this hurt so much. Because somewhere deep down, maybe I had noticed things. Maybe I just didn't want to look too closely. The distance, the shorter conversations, the way he started keeping his phone face down more often, the way he'd smile at texts and then immediately clear his expression when I walked into the room. At the time, every explanation sounded reasonable. Now they sounded rehearsed. My phone buzzed again on the counter. Neither of us moved at first. Then finally I reached for it. 6 messages now. 6, like volume could somehow fix betrayal. I unlocked the screen slowly. Please talk to me. I can explain. You left with him? That last one made my stomach tighten. Not because of jealousy, because of the tone. Even now, after getting caught, part of him was still focused on Mark, not me. Not the fact that I'd just watched my marriage crack open in front of strangers. Mark noticed the expression on my face. What? I turned the phone slightly so he could see the screen. His jaw tightened almost immediately. He doesn't get to do that, he muttered. Do what? Turn this into something else. I frowned. He's already trying to shift focus, Mark said. Instead of dealing with what he did, I stared at the message again. And the worst part? Mark was right. I knew my husband well enough to recognize the pattern already. Deflect, redirect, complicate. Anything except stand still and take responsibility. A cold anger started settling into me then. Different from the panic earlier. Cleaner, sharper. He's going to try to make me doubt myself, I said quietly. Mark didn't answer, but he didn't need to, because we both knew it was true. I locked the phone again and set it back down. I'm not talking to him tonight. You don't have to. He's going to show up here eventually. That made Mark straighten slightly. You think so? I gave him a look. He got caught cheating in public, I said flatly. Yeah, I think he's probably going to show up. The reality of that settled over the room, and suddenly the house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt tense, like waiting for a storm. I walked into the living room again, glass still in hand, and sat down on the couch. Mark stayed standing this time. You want me to leave before he gets here? The fact that he asked told me a lot about him. He wasn't trying to insert himself into this, wasn't trying to play hero. He was giving me a choice. And honestly, I didn't know what the right answer was. Part of me thought maybe he should go because this was between me and my husband. But another part of me, the bigger part, didn't want to face tonight alone, not after everything. I don't know, I admitted. Mark nodded once slowly like he understood exactly what I meant. Then before either of us could say anything else, headlights swept across the front window. My chest tightened instantly. The car door slammed outside. Silence, then footsteps. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Mark looked toward the front door but stayed where he was. The key slid into the lock, and suddenly I realized something terrifying. This was the first time in 8 years I didn't know the man walking into my house. The door opened. He stepped inside, looking breathless, tense, eyes immediately searching the room until they landed on me. Then Mark, the air changed instantly. There was no warmth in it anymore, no familiarity, just pressure. There you are, he said quickly, like relief was supposed to erase what happened. I've been calling you. I stared at him from the couch. And for the first time in years, I saw him differently. Not as my husband, not as my partner, just as a man who lied to me. A man who sat in a bar with another woman while I stood barefoot in our kitchen thinking my marriage was safe. You need to leave, he said suddenly, looking directly at Mark. Mark didn't move. No, I said before Mark could answer. My husband's eyes snapped back to me. What? I said no. The room went still. He blinked like he genuinely wasn't expecting resistance from me. Maybe because I'd spent years being reasonable, patient, understanding. Maybe he thought tonight would be no different. You don't get to walk in here and start making decisions right now, I said quietly. His expression hardened slightly. This is between us. It became everyone's business the second you started cheating in public. That landed. I saw it in his face immediately. A flash of anger, embarrassment. But underneath both of those, something uglier, not guilt, resentment. Like he was angry at being exposed. You don't understand what you saw, he said. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. I saw you sitting with another woman while she touched your arm and looked at you like she knew you. I said, what exactly requires clarification there? It wasn't serious. The words hit me like a slap. Not serious, as if that made it better. As if betrayal comes with levels that somehow make it acceptable. Oh, I said slowly, standing up from the couch. So I should feel relieved then? That's not what I mean. Then explain it to me. He dragged a hand through his hair aggressively. It got complicated. I stared at him in disbelief. No, I said quietly, you complicated it. There's a difference. Silence. Heavy, sharp. I could feel Mark staying intentionally quiet behind me, not interfering, just there. And somehow that steadiness made me stronger. My husband looked between us again, jaw tightening. How long has this been going on exactly? I asked. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me more than words would have. How long? I repeated. A few months. Even though Mark had already told me, hearing it from him felt different, more brutal, more final. I nodded slowly once. A few months, I repeated quietly, like I was testing how the words sounded out loud, like maybe they'd feel less real that way. They didn't. I didn't mean for this to happen. That sentence. That stupid sentence. People say it like cheating is weather, like betrayal just falls from the sky and lands on them unexpectedly. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. You made hundreds of choices, I said quietly. Thousands probably. Texts, calls, meetings, lies. My voice tightened slightly. This didn't just happen. He opened his mouth again, but I kept going. You know what's crazy? I said. I was standing in this kitchen earlier today, worried about dried orange juice stuck to a glass while you were out there doing this. His face shifted slightly at that. Maybe because suddenly it sounded real, domestic, human, not dramatic. That's what betrayal actually destroys. Not just love, normal life. The tiny ordinary moments you thought were safe. I never wanted to hurt you. There's that sentence again. I mean it. I looked at him for a long second, and maybe the saddest part of the whole thing? I think he did mean it. Not enough to stop, but enough to feel bad afterward. And somehow that almost hurt worse. Because it meant he knew exactly what this would do to me, and did it anyway. I folded my arms tightly across my chest. So, what now? What do you mean? I mean, what was your plan? I asked. Seriously, how did this end in your head? He looked genuinely thrown by the question. I don't know. Exactly. The room fell silent again. Then finally, he looked toward Mark one more time. You need to go. This time Mark looked at me before reacting. Not him, me. Waiting for my decision. And that mattered more than I can explain. No, I said again. My husband's expression darkened immediately. You're really choosing him being here right now? I stared at him in disbelief. You cheated on me 6 hours ago and you think this is about Mark? I'm saying this is inappropriate. Inappropriate? I repeated, almost laughing again. You brought another woman to a bar and you're worried about inappropriate? He exhaled sharply, frustrated now. This isn't helping. No, I said quietly. What's not helping is realizing I married someone who still thinks he gets to control the situation after destroying it. That one hit hard. I saw it all over his face. And for the first time since he walked through the door, he didn't have a response. Just silence. Real silence. Not defensive silence. Not calculating silence. Empty silence. Because there wasn't a good argument left. And standing there looking at him, I realized something I hadn't fully understood until that exact moment. The relationship I thought I had was already gone. Maybe it had been gone for months, maybe longer. I just hadn't known it yet. And once you truly see that, you can't unsee it. He stood there in the middle of the living room staring at me, like he still couldn't figure out why none of this was going the way he expected. And honestly, maybe that was the biggest problem between us. He thought getting caught was the disaster. For me, the disaster was realizing who he became while I wasn't looking. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. The house was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway. A normal sound. A normal night. Except nothing about this felt normal anymore. Finally, he looked at me again. So that's it? He asked quietly. You're just done? The question almost made me angry. Not because of the words. Because of how simple he made them sound. Like 8 years together could be reduced to one sentence. Like betrayal was a bad argument we could sleep off. I crossed my arms tighter. You don't get to act shocked that this has consequences. I said I was sorry, and I said that's not enough. His jaw flexed slightly. I made a mistake. No, I said immediately. You made a pattern, that one landed hard. I could see it. Because deep down, he knew I was right. A mistake happens once. What he did took planning, consistency, effort, and the worst part? He got comfortable doing it. That's what kept replaying in my head. Not just the cheating, the ease of it, the casualness. The way he sat there smiling at her like our life together, wasn't sitting back at home waiting for him. I never stopped loving you, he said suddenly. I stared at him for a long moment after that. Then I shook my head slowly. You don't betray people you're protecting. His eyes dropped briefly, and for the first time all night, he actually looked ashamed, not defensive, not frustrated, ashamed. But it was too late. That's the thing people don't talk about enough. Sometimes the apology comes after the damage has already settled too deep. Sometimes the moment that could saved everything passed weeks ago without anyone realizing it. He took a slow breath. So what happens now? I looked around the room. At the couch. The pictures on the wall. The kitchen we painted together 3 summers ago. All these pieces of a life that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. And weirdly, instead of feeling panic, I felt clarity. Painful clarity. The kind that cuts clean instead of chaotic. I think, I said slowly, you should stay somewhere else tonight. His eyes snapped back to mine. You're kicking me out? The disbelief in his voice almost would have been funny under different circumstances. You already left, I said quietly. You just did it before I knew. Silence. Heavy. Final. He looked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to fight harder. But then his shoulders dropped slightly. Because somewhere inside him, he understood. He glanced toward the hallway, toward our bedroom, and I watched reality finally start catching up to him. This was real now. Not hidden. Not manageable. Real. Fine, he muttered eventually. Then he looked at Mark again. And there it was. That bitterness. That need to blame someone else for what he'd done. You happy now? He asked him coldly. Mark's expression didn't change. This was never about me. No, I said before my husband could respond. It was about you lying to me. He looked back at me one last time. And for a second, I saw flashes of the man I used to love. The man who danced with me in the kitchen at midnight once because we couldn't sleep. The man who held my hand at my father's funeral. The man who used to look at me like I was home. And maybe that's why this hurt so much. Because losing someone hurts. But watching them slowly become someone you no longer recognize, that's a different kind of grief. He grabbed a small bag from the hallway closet and shoved a few things into it without another word. No dramatic speech. No movie moment. Just quiet collapse. When he finally reached the front door, he stopped. His hand rested on the knob for a second. I do love you, he said without turning around. I closed my eyes briefly. And this time when I answered, my voice didn't shake. I know, I said softly. But you loved me carelessly. The room went completely still. Then he left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. And just like that, 8 years ended without fireworks, without screaming, without some giant cinematic breakdown, just silence. A terrible, honest silence. I stood there staring at the door long after he was gone. Part of me expected him to come back, expected this to somehow rewind itself. But it didn't, because real life doesn't pause when your heart breaks. The clock kept ticking. Cars still passed outside. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The world moved forward whether I was ready or not. "You okay?" Mark asked carefully. And that question almost made me laugh again. Okay, what a strange word. I wiped quickly under my eyes before any tears could actually fall. "No," I admitted honestly, "but I think I will be eventually." Mark nodded slowly like he understood that answer better than a fake one. Neither of us spoke for a minute. Then finally, I walked over to the couch and sat down heavily, suddenly exhausted in a way I'd never felt before. Mark stayed near the doorway, still careful, still giving me space. "You don't have to stay now," I said quietly. He hesitated. "You sure?" I looked around the room again, at the silence, at the emptiness, at the wreckage of a life I thought was permanent. Then I looked back at him. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think I need to feel this part on my own." He nodded once, no guilt, no pressure, no unnecessary words, just understanding. He grabbed his keys from the counter, then paused before leaving. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "none of this says anything about your value." That one almost broke me, because deep down, that's where betrayal goes first. Your worth. It makes you question everything. Was I not enough? Was I too trusting, too boring, too comfortable, too easy to lie to? But cheating says more about the character of the person doing it than the person getting hurt by it. And hearing someone say that out loud mattered more than I expected. "Thank you," I whispered. Then he gave me one small nod and walked out the front door, and suddenly, I was alone, really alone. I sat there in the quiet living room for what felt like hours. No music, no TV, no distractions. Just me and the truth. And eventually, after the shock started settling, something unexpected happened. I stopped thinking about her. I stopped thinking about the bar. I even stopped thinking about the lies for a minute. And I started thinking about myself, about how much of me had disappeared slowly inside that relationship without me noticing. How many times I made excuses for distance. How many moments I accepted less than I deserved because routine is comfortable, and comfort is dangerous. I realized something sitting there in that silence. This wasn't the end of my life, it was the end of an illusion. And painful as that was, maybe it was necessary. Because sometimes losing what you thought you wanted forces you to finally see what you actually deserve. Around midnight, I finally stood up from the couch and walked through the house, turning lights off one by one. When I reached the bedroom, I stopped in the doorway. His side of the bed was untouched, but it didn't feel comforting anymore. It just felt empty. I crawled into bed slowly and stared at the ceiling in the dark. And for the first time all day, I let myself cry. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears slipping into the pillow while the reality settled into my chest piece by piece. But underneath all the hurt, there was something else too. Relief. Because deep down, even pain feels lighter than confusion. And at least now I knew the truth. Even if it shattered me first. The next morning, sunlight came through the blinds exactly like it had the day before. The dishwasher still hummed. The kitchen still smelled faintly like coffee. The world looked exactly the same. But I wasn't. And maybe that's the strangest thing about heartbreak. How life keeps looking ordinary while you become someone completely new inside it. I stood barefoot in the kitchen again, holding a glass in my hand. Same kitchen, same house, same quiet, but not the same woman. Because the version of me that ignored the signs, that settled for half-truths, that trusted someone who stopped protecting my heart, she ended the moment I walked into that bar. And the woman standing here now, she finally understood something important. Love is not supposed to make you feel uncertain of your worth. The right person doesn't make you compete for honesty. And no matter how badly someone hurts you, you survive it. Slowly, painfully, but you do. That's the part nobody tells you at the beginning. The after, the quiet survival of it, the rebuilding. The moment you look in the mirror weeks later and realize your eyes don't look broken anymore. Just wiser. And standing there in the morning light, I finally understood something that took me 8 years to learn. Sometimes the worst day of your life is also the first day you stop betraying yourself.